How you doing?
I'm good. I'm tired. And the rain, for listeners who are not in California, we are getting just a ton of rain right now.
I
So,
know.
like,
It's really nuts.
really nuts. They said in downtown LA, they've had more rain that since like 2004, which I don't actually know if that's true. I do know there's puddles all over my backyard.
I don't want to say that I feel like things are a little dramatic, but I
Oh
feel
my
like things are
God.
a little dramatic.
Well, yes, they are, because I've gotten so many texts from friends and family who are not here saying, "Are you okay?" I realize there's absolutely places that are struggling, and there's landslides, and school was canceled today for my daughter because
Oh wow.
it's in a valley that the water could come down. But
Hmm.
generally speaking, we're fine. How are you? Let's just wait. Let's just back up. You just produced this powerhouse weekend for the best bookstore in Palm Springs. It was like, kudos to you. You did such an
Thanks.
incredible job. You got together such an incredible group of, I almost said actors. Hi, can you tell me working? Writers, amazing panelists.
For
Like,
the
take a
first
moment.
annual Palm Springs Readers Festival. I know I was so thrilled. And there were a handful of Gays Reading alumni. And I was so honored that they were just like so willing to dive in and be like, yes, let's do it. So quick little shout outs to who was there.
Yeah.
Jasmine Guillory, Laura Love Harden, Jedediah Jenkins, Angie Kim, Rashid Newson, and R. Eric Thomas. Thanks to all of you specifically, but to all of the authors that were there. I'm so excited. There was a panel where it was authors with books that are coming out later in the year. It was not
Mm.
dissimilar from upcoming and up and coming, though they were not first time writers. And they were talking about their books. And I'm so excited for all of their books. And as they start to roll out, we'll shout them out here on the podcast too,
Woo!
because I'm so excited.
Amazing.
Speaking of, we have some happy pub days
Yes, we do.
to wish.
We do. Starting off with Daniel Lefferts and his book Ways and Means, which is out today.
And Rebecca K. Riley, Greta and Valdin, both of whom can be heard on our first upcoming and up and coming episode that just came out a couple weeks ago.
Which is amazing. And then the follow-up to the smash hit 7 Days in June, T. Williams' new book, A Love Song for Ricky Wilde, is out today and already a bestseller. I should say I saw it was on the Amazon bestseller list.
And also out today is Get the Picture by Bianca Bosker, which Brett and I both were obsessed with. And you will hear us obsess over the book and Bianca in the coming weeks when she's on Gays Reading. We love her.
She's great.
Speaking of authors that we love,
Yes.
Dolly Alderton,
Good going, Miss Dolly.
We were so obsessed with Carolina Donahue, and so it's no surprise that they are best friends. For those who are unfamiliar, Dolly Alderton is an award-winning and international best-selling author and journalist based in London. She's a columnist for the Sunday Times Style and has also written for GQ, Red, Mary Claire, and Grazia. She's the former co-host and co-creator of the weekly pop culture and current affairs podcast, The High Low. Her novel Ghosts was a #1 bestseller in the UK, and her book Everything I Know About Love was a New York Times bestseller and won the National Book Award in the UK for Autobiography of the Year.
Woo!
Woo! And you'll hear me talk a lot to her about how much I loved Ghosts. If you haven't read it yet, you have to go pick it up.
I had another person tell me this weekend how much they love that book. So, yeah.
Because it's so good.
Yeah.
No surprises.
Yeah.
As always, if you like what you're hearing, share us with your friends, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on social media at Gays Reading. If you want a copy of the book or any other books that we've talked about on this episode, check out our bookshop.org page. Check out our Patreon where we have bonus content. Check out our merch because we've got mugs, we've got totes, we've got shirts, we've got all this sort of stuff.
Okay, but you are so ready to be working on like the Vegas Strip right now with that standing outside. Come inside, it's air conditioned. Yes.
All that said, I'm Jason.
And I'm Brett.
And enjoy this episode of Gays Reading.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. It's morning for us. It's afternoon for you.
All right.
Hello.
Okay, say good day.
Good day. Oh, I've got a Zabar's mug.
You do?
Oh,
that's so funny. I love that.
I know. I drink it from it and pretend that I'm Nora Ephron living in Epthorpe.
Yes, as you should.
Something that's so devastating when you're a real Nora Ephron fan is the more I read and learn about her, the more I absolutely know she would have found me so annoying. It's really devastating
But
to realize that.
listen, may she rest in peace. We miss her very much, but we don't ever actually need to find that out. So
No.
I
in
know.
our imaginations, she loves you. And
Yeah.
you're the new Nora Ephron. So maybe
Yeah.
that's why she finds you annoying.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Not
Right.
the fact that I just know she would have found me because I think the thing about Nora that women are so obsessed with is that she is such a ballbuster.
Are you?
No. And that's why she wouldn't like me, because I think I would be so simpering around her.
Yeah, but I think you would, but I think you kind of tell it like it is. And I think you have a very honest and direct approach to things that I think she would completely respond to.
I really appreciate your support in this fantasy, both of you.
But
Thank you.
also, like, I think the modern Nora Ephron twist is that there is a happy ending, but in a way that she wouldn't have written.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's so weird actually thinking about how cynical she was as a person, and actually all her love stories are so hopeful
Mhm.
and so sweet in a way that
Very
I really
almost a little
struggle.
saccharine.
Yeah, in a way that I struggle to be that sort of what's the word? Hetero optimistic.
Oh, I love
Is
that
is
term.
that a thing?
Yeah, because I was accused of being hetero pessimistic, and I was like, fair
Oh,
play.
fascinating.
Why isn't it just
No.
pessimistic or cynical?
Exactly.
Why does it?
I'm gonna start
'cause
calling it hetero marriage now too.
seriously, because I am absolutely homosexual cynical. I mean, like, why can't it just be like, I am completely glass half empty. Try very hard for half full.
You're a
But,
glass half empty? Really?
oh, I am a lot of times. My chip is much more full. I'm always
Chip is
empty.
his husband. Dolly, what about you? Are
Yeah.
you glass half empty or
Okay.
half full?
I'm glass half full about everything. I'm so Pollyanna-ish until it comes to the state of heterosexuality, and then I feel quite hetero pessimistic.
That's fair. Okay.
How can you not be? But I think that's I'm always trying to find moments of connectivity or hope or change,
Mhm.
within that landscape. But
And then you see the
I don't
Oscar nominations.
depressing. Most straight people I know are quite miserable in their relationships, I think. But then I talk to my gay friends and they get annoyed because I am always being one of those annoying straight people being like, if only our community could learn from your community how to speak to each other and communicate and function, whatever. And they're like, we're out here having a terrible time as well.
No,
Maybe just relationships are hard.
I mean, relationships are hard, but my husband and I are very proud of how we communicate, and I would agree with you. I'm like, I wish my straight friends would
Yeah.
do what I do.
What do you
Yeah,
think
I
that
Sorry
is?
just
about it,
think-
straight
Why?
friends.
But let's wait. We got to take a moment with this because why? What is that? Chip and I have been together for 28 years. A large percentage of my couple friends who are straight have broken up. I'm old enough to be in that phase where people have been together long enough to understand this isn't working anymore. So there's that, I understand, but it is interesting to me that a lot of the gay couples that I personally am friends with have been in long, sustained relationships. But for whatever
I
reason,
mean,
it's interesting.
I think there's even something as simple as like gay men can look at other men together and comment on whether or not they're attractive and not feel threatened. Whereas, like, if a woman says to her husband, that guy's hot, he might feel threatened, and vice versa. There is a sort of relationship between gay men versus a heterosexual couple that I just think is like different in that sort of regard. I don't know.
I got in a lot of hot water the other day watching Saltburn with my other half.
Mhm.
Oh, I haven't
Because I
watched it
just
yet, but I've been
I
told I need
didn't
to.
realize that I had leant over to him and whispered for the 5th time, "He's so fierce." And I think he said it was the 5th time that he turned, whispered to me, and he went, "You don't have to keep telling." But he
Well,
is a
then
complete.
at a certain
I
point, you're like, well, what are you
mean,
saying about me? Right. It's
Right.
Yeah,
like,
I just had to say it. He's had an effect on me that I haven't had since I was a teenage girl.
mm,
I
But
I
just
get
going
it.
back, yeah, but just going back quickly to what you're saying, I think there's also something in the fact that a long-term hetero template is so entrenched in Christian ritual and in like there are these templates that we've inherited from our parents and ancestors that most of us just walk into without even really thinking about it, whether it's like share of domestic labor or rules of monogamy or whatever, that just don't really fit a modern life for a lot of us, which is why I think, whereas I think my queer friends, on the whole, some are in very traditional relationships, but I think there is more room to design relationships.
I think maybe that's what I was trying to get at is regardless of gay generations, we never really had a template. While there is the heterosexual ideal, in quotation marks, to sort of aspire to, I guess, we still get to make it up as we go along because we've not seen these relationships function over generations. You know what I mean? Whereas even like our wedding was not like any wedding that anyone had ever been to because we were able to sort of turn it on its head. And like there was not going to be a person in a white dress walking down the aisle.
I was going to say,
like,
what did your dress look like?
So just like in general, we were able to make our own rules. And I think that like, gay people sort of are in that world of making their own rules. And that's maybe what it is. We all just need to realize we're all allowed to make our own rules.
Yeah. Whereas with, you know, I am still in total shock. And this will sound like a voice of judgment, but it's more just I am so interested and flabbergasted by the fact that there are so many women I know that are like total card-carrying feminists that have, you know, left-leaning, some even radical politics, and yet they still were delighted that their boyfriend rang their dad to ask permission to be proposed to. I just can't get my little head around that. It runs so deep in us, I think.
Yeah. No,
it's
absolutely.
and it's gender. It's also the gender rules too. And that goes back to the gay relationships versus, I've always said this because the rules change because, and I know like we have 2 kids and we have a lot of people who would say to us, not, and well-meaning, who's the woman in the parenting, you know, effectively. And I have to rephrase it and be like, what do you, and I always would say, I'm sorry, what do you mean? Like, what are you asking me with that question? Who's the caretaker? Who does the traditional, what we consider the roles that people are supposed to play? And so that's been an interesting thing because it becomes less about the gender and more about your strengths and weaknesses as people in terms of that situation.
This brings me to an interesting point about your book, which is why we're here. I mean, we could be here. I could talk to you about whatever, but in doing prep for this conversation, every single interview that you've done so far that's available that I listened to, let's say I've not, give the benefit of the doubt to the handful that I've not listened to, bring up the fact that you are a woman writing from a man's perspective. And I was like, how many fucking men get asked the question writing from a woman's perspective? It made me so angry. I will then flip it around and say, what I would like to think, I'm being very glass half full here, what I would like to think is that perhaps they were like, Dolly Alderton is writing from a man's perspective. Because you are very woman-centric. It's about, let's talk about ghosts in a minute, but like it is very female empowerment is your brand. And so maybe it's the fact that you are writing from a man's perspective. And that's what's interesting. Do you think that that's the case or do you not? Do you think it's the other way?
First of all, thank you so much for saying that because it has been getting on my fucking nuts. For no other reason.
As it should.
Yeah, I get it.
No
it was
other
getting on
reason.
mine and I'm not you.
Yeah. For no other reason than it's just boring to say the same thing over and over and over again. And I just have 2 questions that have been asked of me like on rotation since I started, well, since Everything I Know About Love was published. The first is, why don't you write about your personal life anymore? What was it like writing about your personal life and now not writing about your personal life? And then the other is, why did you choose to write as a man? Now, because I am a Pollyanna, and because as well, I was on the other side of this for a long time. I was a journalist, apparently. I did journalism training. You know, I wasn't like a proper serious journalist, but for a long time in my 20s, my job was to interview people or to write stories about cultural moments. And I don't hate journalists in the way that a lot of other people do. And I understand. So when questions rub me up the wrong way, or when I'm asked the same question over and over again, like a stuck record, I'm always interested in why that is. And as you accurately observe, first of all, I'm known for two things. My first book, which was my biggest book, arguably probably will be the biggest thing I ever write, I think, and I'm totally fine with that, was a very personal memoir that I wrote age 28. I have also only written really for and about women my whole life. If you go onto the Instagram, you can do this like very narcissistic thing where you it's like a breakdown of your audience. I think I'm hovering on 96% a female following. You know, when I do live tours, it will be in a theatre of 2,000. It will be 1,195 women, a handful of gay guys, and then 2 husbands or boyfriends who've been forced to be there. And like,
I would be there. Let's be very clear. I'm one of the 5.
Yeah. Well, I was, and you
there.
crossed 2 little sections there. So
Yeah. And like, you know, holding a plastic pint of beer uncomfortably while I make jokes about UTIs on stage and women screech with a glass of Sauvignon Blanc in their hand. Like, those are my people. I'm very happy with those people. So I think that is why I keep being asked those questions.
Yeah.
I think it is just like, my friend Caroline O'Donoghue, who's an author, said this really smart thing to me once about how to look at media. This is gorgeous. And I actually love doing podcasts because it's the one place where you know you can't be misquoted. But on the whole, I find press, like most people, I really, really dread it. Like it's a part of my job I really, really, really find very difficult and I don't enjoy. And something she said to me that I think is so smart for creatives to remember is, I have a personal dossier of every decision I've made in my career, and how I've moved the dial. No one else fucking cares. No one else is keeping that file updated. They just remember you for your biggest hits. So they're just going to keep asking about those. And it's totally understandable.
It's very interesting that you say that because Caroline O'Donoghue was our very first guest on Gaze Reading.
Was she?
Well, and we spent about 15 minutes talking about my love of this gal named Dolly Alderton and her book Ghosts.
Oh.
And I was talking so much about Ghosts, and she said, you'd be thrilled to hear that I was so excited about Ghosts because that's not what you're known for in the UK. Because because to the exact point that you're just describing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's a nice surprise, but you know, I just feel like I've just had to make my peace with the fact that Everything About Love will be the thing that might outshine everything else. And I just think it would be so ungracious to be not cool about that. Not to compare myself to Geri Halliwell, Ginger Spice, but
hello, I'm your age. I know exactly. Talk about.
Hello, I'm not your age, and I know.
Talk about one of my first crushes. Oh my God.
This is Gaze Reading.
Jesus. By the way, she was one of my first crushes, and I interviewed her this summer. And I asked her off record because I knew it would embarrass her if I put it in print. But I was like, you were like my sexual awakening, I think. And I think it was the same for lots of other women I know. And I said, why do you think that is? And she said, I think it's because you knew that she obviously knew she was a flirty, sexy character in culture, but she said, I think it's because you all knew that I would never hurt you.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, God, that's so smart. Because I think it is that. I think it's like you're coming into these sexual feelings as a young person, but it feels so high risk to put that on this like opposite sex that feels so scary and confusing. So
right. And she's like still flirty, but also safe.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating.
But she said when I interviewed her, I was like interviewing her about her children's novel that she'd written, but obviously like she invited me to her house for the day. She knew I was going to ask her exactly 3 questions about that. And I just want to ask her about the Spice Girls.
Right.
And she was, which was now, FYI, the woman is 50, 2 years of her entire life. And she was just so gracious and so loving about that time and so understanding of why that's the only thing people want to talk about. And I just looked at her and I was just like, that should be our model. It's just like, it's a cute look, I think, to just be gracious about that stuff.
I mean, most importantly, when she sat down with you, did she look at you in the eyes and say, okay, now tell me what you want, what you really, really want?
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Because if that didn't happen, then my fantasy is just not coming true.
I'm afraid she didn't. She's so eccentric. She was talking to me a lot about the Tudors and Anne Boleyn. I had to work quite hard to get her off that.
Oh, geez.
Wow. That's fascinating.
So to talk about ghosts for just one more second,
Yeah, sure.
I have a group thread with two dear friends of mine. Shout out to Lauren and Ashley. They're big fans of the podcast. But we all happen to read Ghosts around the same time, unrelated to the other. And we all loved it. And one day, this is like going on 2 years now, I had read a book and I compared it to Ghosts. And I was like, it's like Ghosts, but, something. And I like used some sort of thing that was a descriptor. And what that meant was it's readable, it's contemporary, but it's also literary and thoughtful. And so it's like Ghosts, quote unquote, in that regard, but, with a twist in this way. And it has become the thing we say about everything. It's like become this
That's
inside
so
joke with us.
nice.
Like when Good Material was announced, we were texting each other. We were like, it's like Ghosts, but brand new.
I
Or
love that.
or like, I don't know, one of us was moving. It's like Ghosts, but a new apartment. Like it just has become this thing. And if you search the word ghosts in our phone, you see the text thread. It's like pages and pages of just talking about go.
Oh my
Anyway,
God.
we're big
Nothing
fans.
makes me happier. This is Caroline and I hosted a podcast about Sex in the City.
Yes.
And nothing
Yeah.
made us happier and nothing felt like a higher quality expression of fandom or admiration was when we became people's memes in their WhatsApp chats. It just it's like, that makes me think that you and I would be friends.
Yes. Right. You're basically our meme. So,
Yes.
okay. So I've teed up with that. Let me follow up by saying, I listened to tons last night. I don't know I know a single Robbie Williams song.
Oh my, really?
I'm really
Wait,
sorry. I had
wait.
to confess.
No, but also you have to watch the documentary on Netflix.
It's
You
so
have.
fucking good.
Okay.
Oh my
no, I will.
God.
But like, I was like, okay, in prepping for this, I have to listen to the Robbie
Oh
Williams
my
greatest
God.
hits. And I was
I
listening and I
don't
was like, I
wanna
don't know
rock.
that I know.
Oh my
So
God, rock DJ. But also,
So that's me
good.
making my confession to you.
oh my God,
Tell me what you thought, Brett, of the documentary.
I found it really honest, very brave, very sad. I found it so heartbreaking.
I love a
And,
documentary, so I need to check it out.
And I really appreciated it. I find him fascinating, crazy talented. And like I said, like he reeked sex and sexuality and just in a way that like it's not always palpable. Like Lenny Kravitz has that. Like certainly there's a lot of people who do in a very kind of, it's feral almost. It's very
Yeah.
deep.
Totally. And actually, there is this really satisfying moment where, because Robbie was my sexual awakening after Geri, she cracked open the door, then he flung it open. And I was like, wow, I'm a sexual sentient being. And there is this very satisfying moment where Robbie talks about this like very intense, beautiful, pure, but obviously highly charged affair that he had with Geri Halliwell.
And you were like, it all makes sense now.
It all makes sense.
Of course.
It's so good.
Well, but this
And
is
that's
why I
and I
was
could
so
just see you
confused.
weeping as you're watching that part. You're like,
Yeah.
I knew it.
I knew it. And I'm telling everyone who hasn't watched it, if you're interested in, the number one religion that we all live under, which is fame, if you're interested in fame and the nature of fame, and you're interested in success and the nature of success, I feel like this documentary is like a parable. And actually, what has stunned me so much about, I'm obviously not famous, but I've had a degree of being in the public eye. What has stunned me about the last 5 years is that there is no way to go through the journey of quick success or publicness or fame without hitting every single one of the beats that every single person hits. There is every person goes through the same cliched journey. It is unavoidable. And the only thing that differs is the support network you have around you and how you choose to manage it and weather the storms. It is, no one has a different story. It's exactly the same for everyone.
Talking about that and getting back to the book for a second, to make this character of Andy a stand-up What made it that versus, I don't know, an actor or whatever kind of profession?
Mm.
What drove you to say, I want this to be a stand-up?
Do you know what? Initially, I did think about Andy being an actor, but I was in a relationship with an actor at the time. And as I've moved more into your world, Brett, as I've moved more into screenwriting,
Mm.
I've made more friends that are actors. It just felt all too close to home writing about
Mm-hmm.
actors. I mean, I still feel like I've got a book about actors in me because I'm really fascinated by actors and that choice as a career. But I thought comedy was adjacent to acting, and I
Yeah.
was interested so much about the book is about ego and humiliation
Mm.
and vulnerability, and how much those things are in attendance in the process of heartbreak, and how much in heartbreak it can feel like the pain you're feeling is about the absence of a person, when really what you're feeling is deep abandonment and humiliation. So I was like, I want a job that ties into that thematically. Nothing for me is more vulnerable and more ripe for humiliation than getting on stage every night and
Yeah.
basically trying to make a room of people like you and trying to make them and trying to entertain them. So it just felt like another layer of that theme within the book.
Yeah.
And I think as well, unlike Caroline, who I'm always trying to learn from, in fact, we're working on a film project together at the moment, and I'm just astonished at how good she is at plot. She's like the only millennial writer who's aware that plot is a thing. The rest of us are just writing scenes of people sitting in rooms, observing things pithily or talking about their feelings. Caroline is a big plot girl.
Uh-huh.
And I'm always trying to find ways of like bringing in characters that I don't have to assign too much plot to. So like that was what
Mm.
I liked about the comedy circuit, is that I got to take Andy every week to these different clubs and to these
Right.
different into these different backstage rooms. And you would get a slice of the industry there. You would get a slice of all these different comedians, and therefore a slice of culture and a slice of
Right.
society. Um, and they would be this sort of circus of cameos. They go on stage, they do a performance, they come backstage, they talk to Andy, and then they go away, and I never have to write about them again. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like a cheap
Little
trick
pop
that
in.
kind of
Sure.
exactly, it like
Yeah.
stuffs the book full of these interesting characters.
In your acknowledgments, you thank a handful of men that you interviewed to create Andy, or that you
Yeah.
used to help inspire Andy. You've also said in these interviews that I've heard you in, you had about 20 hours of content with these guys. Was there anything that surprised you that they shared?
Yeah, lots. I mean, I've always found, maybe this is a hangover of being at an all-girls school when I was a teenager. I've always found men fascinating and frightening and exciting and mystifying, and that I've never really quite been able to shake that off. Like,
Hmm.
I had a feeling the other day when I was walking down the road, and there was a group of schoolboys that were about 14 years old, about 5 of them, just like smoking a joint and sitting on a bench. And I felt, as a 35-year-old woman, I felt a bit butterfly.
That's so funny that you say that, because
Yeah,
you describe that to a 35-year-old gay man, and I have anxiety.
really. No, mine's like, don't say anything mean to me. Don't be,
Oh,
and
interesting.
it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
also like, oh, which one do I fancy? It just sent a shock of feelings through me that felt inappropriate for our age.
Mhm. Oh, that happens to me all the time. I'm like, who's gonna call me gay? Who's gonna be
Yeah.
mean? Who's gonna, because we all have our trauma.
Yeah. And I suppose it's like, it's this question that has like propelled me through so much of my work. That
Mm.
I'm going to sound very a millennial girl, but that thing that Joni Mitchell, when she tuned her guitar, she was always tuning for something called chords of inquiry. Like she was always looking for a sound in her music that felt like a question. And I
Mm.
suppose like one of the chords of inquiry that has been in the melody of all my work is like, what are men? What are they all about? What are they
Mm.
thinking? And I was really, really surprised by a few things I found out. I mean, I found out that they go just as fucking bananas as straight women do in a breakup. They go just as crazy. They obsess, they self-flagellate, they self-loathe, they catastrophize. That we just talk about it. We're just afforded this
Mm.
cultural space to speak about it safely with each other in a way that I think men still feel quite unsafe to
Sure.
discuss that with each other. I mean, that was the big one, was that like I discovered that it didn't matter what their personality was, their age, their class, their background. All of them felt like they were allowed to speak about their breakup for an allotted amount of time. And then they couldn't speak about it with their friends much more, either for fear of boring their friends or for fear of their dignity being compromised. And that was just across the board. It linked every conversation. And then the other surprise that I found, which sort of horrified me, and I've always kind of suspected this, but it was weird to have it confirmed. Every single man I spoke to, when I spoke to them about the biggest heartbreak of their life, even men that when they were talking about like they couldn't see how they would live beyond the pain of losing this woman, and they were thinking about her every day, and years were going by and they were still obsessed. Even those men, when I asked them, what was it like having sex with a new person for the first time? They all said, amazing.
Wow.
And I said to all of them, did you think at all about your ex? And they all said no.
That's so gay.
It's just sort of reassuring that we can all move on.
It's
Still goes
reassuring for
on.
you. Why can't I move on?
Can I tell you
know.
something?
You should write a book
Wait.
about it.
Wow.
The book opens with a list, reasons why it's good I'm not with Jen. Dolly, is there a reason that comes to mind for you? It's like good that you're no longer with someone. Like, what's your favorite reason?
Do you know what? I don't know. Andy does this whole list, which I think is like my therapist advised me to do when I had the last huge heartbreak I had. And that's what kind of inspired the beginning of the book. And I think what it is like when it's unrequited love and you lose someone, it puts you into such a childlike state of abandonment that you behave in a childlike way. And, you know, like some of my worst, lowest quality behavior has been in the wake of someone saying that they don't want to be with me anymore. And then suddenly it becomes about trying to claw back some control. And it's like refusing to give them their stuff back. Or it's like really fixating on the things that were annoying, like they wore backwards baseball caps, or like, I don't know, they left their hair all over the bathroom, and that becomes the thing that you fixate on.
I had someone who always said supposedly instead of supposedly.
Supposedly.
Did you ever correct him?
I did not.
Well, that's on you. But really, it's like, because I remember the list that I made for this guy, and it was like, you know, he drinks too much, he wears this, he whatever. And actually, my therapist said you have to write it out every day and you have to read it every day because it helps you divorce the fantasy of a person from the reality of them. And really, what the real reason, and this is the thing that hurts the most, I think, and takes the longest to get to when you're in the process of a breakup. The real reason you should be so glad you're not with someone who has dumped you is that they don't want to be with you.
Which is also
And
the hardest thing sometimes to accept.
It's the hardest thing to accept. But once you can rebuild who you are and spend enough time in relationships, like, you know, non-romantic relationships that remind you of who you are and your value, you can get to a point where you realize, God, I really deserve to want to be with someone who really wants to be with me as an absolute base level requirement. And also, I think that that's something that it takes men a little longer to get there. I remember watching, I'm sure very problematic now, but I found fabulous film, 500 Days of Summer. Do you remember that little indie film?
Yeah.
And I remember at the end, like there's that moment when she gets engaged, like within a couple of months after breaking up with him. And her whole thing was she couldn't commit. And then he has just this moment on the bench, and I don't think he even names it, but it becomes so clear just through his face that he has finally realized the thing that's going to set him free from the memories of this relationship, which is she didn't want to be with him. And it's not that she didn't want to be in a relationship. It's not that like she then is now on trial after the breakup, that she has to behave in a way where she can't fall in love again to prove her point back to that ex and satisfy his theory about why they broke up. For whatever reason, she just didn't want to be with him, and probably for reasons she can't even articulate.
Sure.
And that is everyone's right. We get one life. You know, we're not obliged to be in relationships we don't want to be in.
Or at all.
You also just said it maybe takes men longer to process that. And I think part of that is because of what you had just described a few minutes ago about women talking through these things and saying them out loud and men not really doing that. We're sort of dancing around this, and typically we talk about this at the beginning of the episode, but we just dove right in. Can you give us like a log line for the book, an elevator pitch for the book?
Sure. I never know how to describe it.
Ah.
It's a book about the aftermath of a broken relationship, told from the perspective of a 35-year-old comedian called Andy, who is mystified by why his girlfriend and the love of his life has ended their relationship. And I suppose this is quite an overblown way of putting it, but my publishers like it when I say it. It's kind of like a Gone Girl for a relationship that's ended.
But no
But
one
no,
dies.
no one dies, guys. No one dies.
You didn't roll your eyes, but you didn't not roll your eyes.
There was a lot of lean back body language that suddenly took place.
You know, it's interesting. As we're talking about relationships, a theme in the book is really giving empathy to both sides. And I know that's a mantra of yours, per se. I think that's something that I don't think we think about enough in our own relationships, in our own arguments. Like, it has taken a lot of therapy and of just like time in my life for me to understand when my husband says something to me, he might not mean what I hear.
Yeah.
And what is going through his mind, and let's unpack it from his perspective. And so there's a lot of like pause. Let's unpack that for both of each other, or both of us, and then move forward. And without giving anything away, I think that you do that so beautifully in this book. You like really share in the empathy and give both of them sort of this well-rounded journey.
Thank you so much.
I gotta, like, it's so commendable the way you flipped it, but made her, as Jason was saying, so incredibly empathetic, and to show this other side of things, that it's okay. It's all okay. And I just love that so much.
I'm so touched that that's what you took from the book, truly, because you get to a point where you keep writing and you keep writing and you keep putting stuff out, and you're aware of things that interest you, but you don't want to focus too much on like, what are the themes of my work? An executive producer who produced my TV show, she read the book and she said to me, your work is about people who choose an unconventional life and making that okay. And I'd never put those things together. But when I think about it, I suppose that is a drum that I bang. I think the things that your politics, quote unquote, and your set of values, or the things that really interest you, they do assert themselves in your work without you even realizing. And it's only after you've put a certain amount out that you can join the dots. And I think for Andy and for Jen, for different reasons, they choose untraditional, unconventional paths at the end of this book. And I think I'm always aware of the courage it still takes, even in 2024, to choose a different path, to break out there on your own and to do the things that none of the people around you are doing. It really does take a huge amount of bravery.
Absolutely.
It's interesting that you're using the word unconventional, because I had a very interesting experience in that after I finished Good Material, I listened to the audiobook of Dear Dolly, which was so fascinating, because what I love about advice columns and other things where people are sharing a part of themselves with a greater community is it's a way for more people to see that they're not alone. And I think a lot of the questions that were coming in Dear Dolly, they were your good material for writing the book. There were things that were coming up, and I was like, oh, what Dolly did was take her responses to Dear Dolly and show, hey, y'all, here's a fictional version of all of these answers. Like, this is real life. It's every human mixed into one, because we're all dealing with the same thing. You said all of the men had the same responses for certain things. And it's like, we are all the same, as quote unquote unconventional as it may seem. We all have these like instincts, and whether or not we're in a relationship, monogamous or otherwise, like, we're human.
Yeah.
And it's unconventional in quotation marks because we've decided that. But we're
totally. Yeah. And I so appreciate you saying that, because I hadn't realized in between my last novel and this novel, I've done now nearly 4 years of answering doing this agony on column. And I always kind of thought it was separate, like I do screenwriting and I do this column and then I write novels. And actually what I've really realized since writing this novel is one informs the other. I think the fact that I'd written a TV show in between my last novel and this novel, I think has sharpened my dialogue. If anything, I think I put too much dialogue. I mean, one of the notes I got was it literally was reading like a screenplay at one point. I put so much dialogue in. Because also I answer that one question per week, but every month I get 50 questions. So I get this insight into this country and what we're all worried about. And as you said, how universal, it's basically the same 7 problems that I'm sent over and over and over.
Asked in a different way, of course.
Asked in a different way, exactly. Yeah. And I hadn't realized, I think it would be like an amazing exercise for all novelists or all screenwriters to have this luxury. And I do consider it a luxury, that column of getting these letters and answering, because really what you're doing, if you're a good agony aunt or uncle, is when someone is writing in, the agonizer is writing in about normally someone else, it's your job to empathize with the person they're complaining about. It's your job to help them understand where the other person who's causing them anguish is coming from. And that is just, how can that not be a good exercise if you're then going to go on and write characters?
Yeah. And that it led so beautifully into good material. And it was a fun way to read the book. And I think, frankly, I would recommend listening to Dear Dolly either before or after, because it's a nice co-piece with good material.
I did a signing the other day, like a book signing. I just have to tell you, this girl came over to me and I just can't stop thinking about her. Because when you do those signings, it's often someone that just stands there and says, this is what your book meant to me, and says something really sweet and pulls their heart out, whatever. And this woman had been waiting for ages, and she came up to me and she said, I've got all your books here for you to sign. And I was like, oh, thank you. She went, other than Dear Dolly, because let's be honest, that was a bit of a copy and paste job. It made me like her so much.
I mean, she's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
That was so Nora Ephron of her.
I know, exactly.
Oh my God,
I know.
That's funny. Something I'm shocked that nobody asked you for any of the things that I've listened to so far is, what would your fake therapy patient name be?
Great question. What do I normally, what I normally do, because I do sometimes do the fake name. Because, not in therapy, obviously. But because my name is Dolly, it's quite a recognizable name.
Yes. We could use your given name.
I could use my given name. Some people still know that. Like the other day, I was doing a really intense hot yoga class, and I was just like this sad little shriveled turtle throughout the whole thing. Just like I hadn't done it in a while, and I was so
beautiful, sad shriveled turtle. That's
just like slow and huffy and just bad.
Okay.
And the woman kept shouting at me, Dolly, and it was just a room of like millennial women. So they obviously all turned around, and I was just like, okay, great. This is pretty embarrassing. So now I have to I think I probably would do what's the porn star thing? It would be like my grandma's name and the road I grew up on. It would be Sheila Allwyn, I think it would be. God, that sounds like a movie star.
It really does. Yes, you're a little movie star.
It really
so
does.
You're in the book. It's maternal grandfather's name and childhood pet cat. And I was like, I don't know that I should be asking people that question, because I'm giving away password security questions. Do you know what I mean?
My password is the same for everything, and it is it's so embarrassing. And it's like
it's a Lordy 524.
It's I love Elordi. Can't believe you don't know who he is, Jason. He is going to change the biochemistry.
I'm living under a rock. Between Ghosts and now Good Material, you are, I think, a modern day Nora Ephron, a modern day Jane Austen. You're just giving the people a reflection of themselves and really doing, I think important work. It's important to see yourself in art that you're consuming, right? And things that are messy and tricky and sticky, we don't get to experience enough. And so thank you for doing that.
I want you and Carolyn to come to the States and do a road trip down the West Coast.
Oh my God, we'd love that.
And Brett and I will be your roadies. We'll be at all the shows. We really will. Wait, but we have to let you go. But does your dating life have any parallels to Barack Obama's time in office?
Oh my God, I love that you picked up on that. That's a reference to my opening essay of Dear Dolly, where I said that basically there was a period of my life as a journalist where I could have gone to interview Barack Obama and the editor would have found a way for me to try and make it about my dating life.
I was like, I have to know. So funny. I'm just proud that I have held myself for a full hour not singing Hello Dolly. That's all. I'm like,
Well done.
I controlled it the whole time. If I was a little anxious, that's why it was trying to burst out. So
It must be hard. Do you know, I rewatched that over Christmas. I had an absolute Barbara Streisand fest over Christmas. They're just so good, those musicals.
did you read her book? Did you listen to her book?
Do you know what? I've got it on Audible. I think it is like a 26-hour commitment, and
It's
I'm ready to
48.
commit.
It's 48.
48.
48.
I listened
Yeah.
to it on 3x because she talks so slowly that you can
Oh,
listen to it.
really?
Oh yeah. So you can listen to it nice and quickly. And it took me like 3 weeks to listen to it. So
Really? Is it worth it?
she goes a little deep into a few things that you're like, girl, I don't care about this. But
Yeah.
the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And by the end, I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
feel sated. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes.
That's the thing with those celebrity memoirs that I have learned to just embrace, is that the most important thing in their life is always like a legal dispute with their label, or like when they had a fallout with their agent. It's like the most meaningful moment of their life, and they will talk about it for 4 chapters.
But 100%. But she goes into like the details of like filming certain things or writing
Yentl,
certain
I
things
hear
that you
is a
don't
lot.
necessarily care about.
Oh,
But-
she's obsessed with talking about Yentl. Yeah.
But the way she talks about navigating the industry and being a woman and like really breaking down barriers, you're like, oh, okay, you've like really earned your diva-ness. And I appreciate it. You know, she earned 48 hours of the audiobook and it definitely
Yeah.
felt, you know, the weight of that. So I certainly recommend it. But
Yeah, I listened to her on Fresh Air with Terry Gross, and she was so delightfully bad-tempered. And I feel the same as you. I feel like when I think about what that woman has been through and what she would have been through in the age she was growing up with the media and
yeah.
as a
Yeah.
Jewish woman, and I just feel like you're allowed to be as cranky as you like. Like, you
Sure.
have
Totally.
earned it. You are talented enough. You have worked hard enough. Be a bitch to everyone.
Just to say, like, you just, in order to get where you want to go, you have to push your way through
Right.
Yeah.
And
and
she's
be
someone who had
respectful
very,
along the way. But
Yes.
you
Yeah.
gotta, you know,
she had a very
Um,
strong sense of self, which helped. Like
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the get-go, because not everybody has that. And many people are figuring out as they go along. But she absolutely, from day one, knew who she was and knew what she was, capable of.
But I
Yeah.
was relatively indifferent to her and then saw her in concert and was like, my life has changed. I'm obsessed. This is amazing. And so I get it. But yeah, Hello Dolly.
Did she
good
bring
movie.
Did she bring her cloned poodles out onto stage in a pram? Her favorite thing to
I
do.
don't
apparently.
think she did.
I'm just obsessed.
I would do that if I had extra money. I would clone my dog.
Yeah. I
Um,
would clone my cat. 100%.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, I just have to say this has been one of the most delightful conversations I've had along the campaign. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Dolly.
Thank you.
Dolly, you are a rock star. You are a gem. You are the salt of the
delight.
earth, a delight.
It's not salt of the earth even. Wow.
Thank you for being here. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah. All of that. All of that.
All
Right, everybody.
of that. And we'll see you later this week for our bonus episode.
Yes.
Really.
With Mark Daly. Well, safe. Yes. All right. Have a good, see you midweek. All right. Bye.